George's music was blaring at all hours of the night, Orky was screaming and recording bizarre content for his channel, and when we would attempt to remedy the situation ourselves, they would either refuse to answer the door or would turn it off for the day, only to continue the next. We have attempted to resolve every issue we have had with these neighbors ourselves to no avail. When Debbie brought this up with Dylan, he said he and his dad barely talked. The only conversations they had were screaming matches, asking either of them to get out of the room. Donna couldn't be any more bothered about the nuisance her husband was creating as she was busy with Mr. John Vera, and all the neighbors knew they were sleeping together. Dylan and Debbie instantly became friends. We didn't mind, but when she started hanging out with him for unusually long amounts of time, my wife asked her to stop meeting with him so much. My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. We'll call him George. Over the years, I've seen George cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming *epic win *epic fail or *epic maintenance of the status quo for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. My wife Victoria and I have been living in this house for 2.5 years. We also have a beautiful young daughter, Debbie. We're renters on a 12-month lease. Immediately after moving in, we started to experience issues with our neighbors, George, who lived with his wife Donna and son Dylan. This was during COVID rental protection orders. Victoria and the neighbor's wife, Donna, didn't get along as much as our kids and were mostly just civil every time they met. So Debbie confessed that she was dating Dylan and she was very lonely as her friends lived far away from her and Dylan was the only constant at present. We let them do whatever they liked after that. Her curfew time was 8 p.m. Dylan was a sweet and helpful guy. I feel sad for him as his parents were such nutcases and didn't give a shit about him. Due to COVID restrictions, our landlord said their hands were tied and they could not serve our neighbors with an official warning. Once COVID restrictions were lifted, we continued complaining and are unaware of if there have been any formal notices regarding our complaints. Unfortunately, in the last few months, George's antics have escalated dramatically, and we fear for our safety. He was the kind of guy who would instigate you, be nice for a day, then instigate and irritate you 10x more, and do the opposite of what was asked of him. He had young models come in every few days, and we would hear screaming and moaning from his bedroom window during the night. He was rich and he was famous. His channel was blowing up with views, and word was he had invested a lot of his money in some shady business. In August, there was a shooting on the street that our complex is on. After a manhunt, Gay 9 search, etc., the suspect was in our neighbor's apartment. To say we were shocked and our first thought was our daughter's safety would be an understatement. We immediately made her break up with Dylan and explained to him that this was because his parents may be involved with stuff that we didn't want to be dragged into. The police took the suspect out of the apartment, and we did not hear anything further, nor did we expect to. The sheriff came into our apartment and requested our Ring footage in support of their investigation. Debbie was heartbroken, and I know she still continues to be in touch with Dylan over text. I can't stop that. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my daughter. So ever since this arrest has happened, we have had a lot of strange issues that continue to get worse. In the last few months, an increasing number of people who appear to be extremely intoxicated are at their doorstep at all hours. They pound on the door and scream at our neighbors for hours until someone answers the door. My wife was outside our door when the neighbors answered to one of the intoxicated folks and overheard George asking, "Can you walk?" And "Okay, take off all of your clothes." Today, there was an intoxicated man wandering in our breezeway. He had a trash bag and was going through it on the stairs, pacing, and leaving random items from said trash bag on our neighbor's doorstep. He then passed out in the breezeway and alarmed our other neighbors. My wife and I are super worried at this point and are taking extra measures for the safety of our daughter and ourselves. We have started locking our doors even during the day and have installed safety grills on all the windows as the glass ones are always easy to break in. Debbie appears to be normal and spends quality time with us, but I know she misses Dylan. Dylan was sent away to one of his uncle's house for a few months, and he was mad at Debbie for breaking up with him. He loved her. I can say this because this little dude cooked for my daughter, made her clear a difficult subject, and even sneaked in to look after her at night when she had a bad cold. He cared a lot about her and would watch her sleep and then sneak out again. I like to mask that I know this fact in front of Debbie, or she would be tempted to patch up with him. Is there anything we can do? We have reported these annoying neighbors at least 50 times in the time we have been here, including evidence of the issues at hand in the form of videos, photos, and audio recordings. We're afraid that their actions keep escalating and are fearful that one of these angry visitors will create an unsafe situation for us and our neighbors. So when George knocked on my door the other day, told me he was going away for a few weeks, and asked that I get his mail, honestly, it was a relief. We can't explain the peace of mind we had knowing I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, newsletters, and a bit of spam, and what I could only assume was a birthday card. Then, one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written "Return to Sender." I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realized there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thud and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. But you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something. No point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I had cursed instinctively. I hoped I hadn't broken anything important, but figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbor about it and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands-free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would come back to claim it. And then I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage-to-house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly sweet odor similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after we smelled it, we genuinely assumed that's exactly what it was, roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realized the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went looking for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. I didn't tell my wife I was going down in the garage as she wasn't home that day. She was at a friend's house in northern France for her best friend's bachelorette. The said friend was getting married the second time to some big shot guy in France, and he had sponsored this bachelorette for his wife's friend. I was jealous. She was gone for a good 10 days and had no clue about the box and the smell. It was just me and Debbie at home. Debbie would mostly be in her room with her phone and laptop and online classes. She was annoyed with the growing stench, though, and asked me to look into it this morning at breakfast. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was the box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat of the month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and heavy? An entire freaking cow? I will update this soon. Before I could go downstairs and check the garage, I got caught up in online work meetings that lasted the whole day. I'd even had to report to work for a couple of days after that. We had to ignore the unbearable stench, and I even asked the neighbors, and one of them said, "It is coming from your garage, Tony. Please look into it before we break in and throw away whatever gunk you're collecting." I didn't tell anyone about the package and decided to look into it as soon as I reach home today. I couldn't stay at work for long because Debbie called me at work and said the smell was so bad she puked twice. I didn't want her to fall sick, especially when her mother was also not in town. So I raced home and went straight to the garage. I had decided to throw out the box as it was without even bothering to open it, but then I went ahead and checked it. Thankfully so, or within the next few days some poor neighbor would definitely break into my garage and find out themselves. What followed after this sent me into a shock. I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hands anyway. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger, but I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I wasn't looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought the smell couldn't get any worse, but as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran up the door for a breath of fresh air, but in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I decided to come back the next morning and do the deed. I'm so sorry for the delay. We were going through a tough time emotionally and mentally. Updating this was the least of my concerns, but here you go, now that I am in better shape. It is vital that I write this update for everyone to read because the box almost landed me in jail. I had returned to the garage the next morning, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared, a clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of that box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbor. Dead, still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally, they took me in for interrogation. It's kind of hard to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage after all. Thankfully, they soon realized I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over that box. The smell might have left a mark throughout my house, but there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence, a vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbor recorded a few short clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm here. Still got plenty of food. That kind of stuff. And then on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door.